We got another one of those blue box knife stories tonight, guys. Stay tuned. You're going to like this one. Hi gang, Rob here. The evening of 26 January 2014. And yes, tonight's knife tale, or from the Sharpening Bench video, does center around a blue Benchmade box. Well, no, it doesn't. It centers around the contents of the blue Benchmade box. Nothing particularly exciting. Just a Griptilian. Full-size variety. Black with BK1 black-coated blade. Standard modified clip point in 154 cm steel. Let me tell you about how I came to possess this knife for just a few days. got an email or a PM or something from, I guess it was an email from my new customer David. Wanted to inquire about having a new knife drop shipped to me for sharpening. Obviously, he's been watching some of my videos. And I had never spoken with him before, and I answered how yes, I would absolutely help that way, and gave him, I think, a link to my sharpening service video to make sure he had all my contact information, and he thanked me. He promptly thanked me for my prompt response and told me the knife was on its way. So this knife was purchased brand new from BladeHQ, and I could tell this young man, and I could tell intuitively that he was young. I could tell he was on fire for the knife hobby. And a couple of days later, the package shows up from BladeHQ, and this is what was inside it. And David, if you're watching, this is what your knife looks like. New from Benchmade and new from the Apostle P sharpening bench. We'll just pause for a moment to let Dave soak this in. Ain't she sweet? So I sent him a message and let him know that I had his knife, and I think it showed up on Thursday, and I said, hey, I'll plan on getting to it over the weekend, which I did. And I immediately got another message back saying something about, hey, hold off, don't sharpen it tonight. And I think he said, I've got an itch I need to scratch. And then I said, no problem. And a little while later, he sent back another message asking me some kind of obscure questions about sharpening and stropping. And rather than try to answer them via email, I said, why don't you give me a call later, David? So he did, and we had a pretty neat discussion. And the reason I'm taking the time to share this with you guys is because I know that a lot of folks who come to the knife hobby and gravitate toward, stumble upon the YouTube knife community are younger guys who are picking up the knife hobby as teenagers or young adults, and it's such a neat hobby, and there's such neat little tools for guys to grow fond of early in life. And when you stumble into the YouTube knife community or even the online forum knife community, and you're brand new to the hobby, you can just absolutely confuse yourself to no end with information. And even if the source of your information is great, and David had I think read some of Cliff Stamp's blog material and probably watched a couple of his YouTube videos, and he mentioned a couple other guys whose videos he had watched and blogs he had read. And I don't think he got any particularly bad information. But you can make your head swim. because we knife guys tend to get ridiculously detailed, and we get we get our minds bogged down with minutia. And some of the points that we debate, guys who have been doing this for a long time, collecting knives, sharpening knives, making knives, we will debate with great passion essentially the difference between a screaming sharp edge and a laser sharp edge, and we'll argue about it. And we'll talk about the finer points of blade finishing methods and if you listen to us talk, you'd think the other guy's method results in a butter knife, when in fact it might have microscopically less efficient blade retention than the guy who's criticizing it. I mean, and these new guys who come in and stumble onto these conversations, they just don't know quite what to make of us. And we got to realize, I think, as experienced knife guys, that not everybody who listens to us or reads us knows what the heck we're talking about, at least not in a way that makes them anything but dangerous. We need to take a minute, back up, take a breath, and realize that there are young hobbyists who need our tutelage and our they need the basics from some of us who know them. And sometimes our stuffy, obscure discussions just kind of make them more confused than they give them help. So that's kind of where David was. He was deathly afraid I might use a diamond spray on my strap because of the micro fissures that those diamond particles put in an edge. Well, it just so happens that I'm in that camp who doesn't really like diamond as a sharpening media, so I assured him that wouldn't happen, and then he was inquiring about what it was that I used, and I use sort of that old-fashioned rouge type compound that comes in a stick that you rub on the leather, and I use a gray medium compound and a green fine compound, and he was a little concerned about that too, and he was concerned that maybe I might be, applying too much pressure or strapping at too vertical an angle and thus polishing off the apex of my edge. And he's heard that and all this stuff he's heard is true, by the way. He's heard that if you overstrap a knife or strap it at the wrong angle or apply too much pressure, you can either deform the edge or roll the edge or polish the edge off. And I assured him that I understand all that. I've made all those mistakes. Made most of them, a couple thousand knives ago. Not to say that I'm infallible at this point in my career, but I'm pretty good at what I do. And I tried to kind of explain to David the process that I use, and that he could rest easy with his knife in my hands, and I won't send him back a knife that's going to have a dull edge or a delicate edge. And I talked with him a little bit about what he's going to use the knife for, and he might be new to the hobby, but he uses his knives, guys. And he told me that he's going to cut some cardboard, he's going to cut some blister pack packaging, and occasionally he's going to cut wire. And we had a little bit of a discussion about especially cutting that blister pack plastic and cutting wire, and how both of those media are capable of exerting a lot of sideways force on a knife edge. There can be some torquing involved in those blister packs, and if we're cutting a wire and looping it around the blade, we're almost always inevitably going to tug that edge to one side or the other as we cut through that wire. So I talked about how you want to do that flat on a cutting board type surface, and he understood that already. But after talking to him, I decided it wasn't a wise thing to go blade wipe. It wasn't a wise thing to go super skinny on David's knife. This particular Griptilian is perfectly ground for a grip. Our ricasso is perfectly formed. The cutting edge starts past the plunge grind. Yay! The cutting edge, although the knife wasn't particularly sharp out of box, was ground really consistently to about 18 degrees per side. I did not have to remove a lot of material, and I ended up taking this one to 17. Notice how consistent the breadth of that secondary bevel is. So I took it to 17 and then put a tiny, tiny, tiny 20 degree micro bevel on it. So we should have lots of stability, but still a razor sharp knife. And doesn't 154 cm take a nice polish? Now I did do, and thanks David for calling me and making me explain myself, because there are a couple things that are easy to shortcut or leave out when I'm sharpening knives if I'm not paying attention. Especially on steel that's relatively easy to sharpen. You know, I did take a little bit of extra care in burr mitigation on this knife. So burr mitigation, what does that mean? That means that as I come to the finished product, do I do some things that reduce or completely eliminate any wire edge burr that might be on that cutting edge before I go to the strop. Now if I don't mitigate that burr, if I don't get rid of it, I have there's a chance that when I go to the strop, I'm not going to wipe that burr off. I'm actually going to roll it over and make it part of the cutting edge. You don't want to do that. We want to end up, before we come to the strop, with no burr. So when I get to about the 1000 grit stone, when I'm doing the micro bevel, the last few strokes that I make with almost no pressure. And not only am I drawing the stones this way, I'm also going to come back and cross hatch them from the other direction. That sort of chops up the burr, for lack of a better word. And then when I go to the polishing tapes, I get that edge all polished up. And I'm on the Edge Pro, remember. After I'm totally done, I'm going to raise the back of my my sharpening rod on the standard a fraction of a degree, maybe a tenth of a degree, barely perceptible. And then I'm going to make some really super light strokes, again in a crosshatch pattern, just to grab and take off any burr that might be there. And then, but right before I go to the strop, of course my leather strop's mounted on wood, I take that knife edge in the end grain of the wood and just gently drag it through that end grain to pull off any wire edge that's still hanging on, then go to the strop. That's what I did on this knife. So, that's enough of me yapping. Now, I can't tell, this test I'm going to do, and you guys see me cut paper all the time. It's not going to tell us anything about edge retention, but it's going to tell us about initial sharpness. We're going to cut a little phone book paper with David's knife. And remember, this isn't one I set up to be a slicer. It doesn't have a 13 degree or even a 15 degree secondary bevel. 17 degrees on this one. So it's not intended to be a super slicer. It's intended to be sharp, and it's intended to hang on to that great working edge for a long time. But I'm telling you, even a knife that's set up to be durable can be sharp enough to cut phone book paper, I think. Let's check. Yeah, I guess so. So you don't have to lay those angles back to nothing to get a sharp knife. Just got to do your part on the stones. Of course, now I got a funky thing going on. But you can see, guys, that's a sharp knife. David, I hope you're happy with it. And as I wrote you after our conversation, thank you for being so inquisitive. Thank you for being so detail oriented and wanting to know really what it is that makes a knife sing, and to know more about the methods of maintaining your knives. I welcome you to the hobby. We're a pretty neat little brotherhood for all our idiosyncrasies and weirdnesses. And as I told you in my last message, or one of my last messages, what I want to see in your young knife career is I want to see you get some of your own maintenance tools, your own sharpening equipment. Get some inexpensive EDC blades in your collection and start taking material off them. Start rubbing stones across steel. Start stroking the leather on the blade, and get those hands trained, and so they can feel what an edge feels like, and then some of this weird esoteric anal knife guy stuff will start to make sense to you. But remember always, David and all you young guys who are new to the hobby, we're not talking rocket science here. We're talking about angles and stones and steel. And all we're doing is we're trying to make, put the knife down. All we're doing, guys, is we're trying to make two sides of a piece of steel come together at a sharp point, and do it with some consistency and straightness. And we're looking for a continuous rib and a cutting edge, not one that does this and not one that looks like this. We're looking for that ribbon of cutting edge. There are lots of ways to skin that cat, believe me. And there are lots of ways to mess up that cat. You don't want to end up with a ribbon that looks like that. But there are lots of ways to skin that cat. And lots of steels and lots of blades want a little bit of different thing here and there. The key is to work out for yourself what method or methods work for your hands and your feel. And obviously there are some truths, some absolute truths in making a knife sharp. But how you get to truth can vary a lot. And there are a lot of resources, wiser men than I, on YouTube and the forums who can help you with that. And the best ones are patient enough to answer questions from guys who have no idea what they just said. Because we all start out there, don't we? I've been collecting knives and sharpening knives for over 30 years, and sometimes Cliff Stamp still says some things that I have no idea what he just said. And I have a little bit of a metallurgical background. So don't feel bad. That's about all I got. David, your knife going back in the mail tomorrow. Should be back to you by Wednesday or Thursday. Well, not back to you. You're going to see it for the first time because it's brand new. And man, is it sweet. Maybe the best Griptilian I've ever seen. Action, beautiful. Blade centering, beautiful. Coating, perfect. Blade grind, perfect. And edge, whew, can't get that one from Benchmade, boys. So grace to you, my friends, and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the Word and David's grip are sharp.